Welcome back, Eleni. Who's got the first question?
Hi, Eleni. You talked before about eating disorders and about going to the gym. I wonder if you could talk more to us about the triggers for young people around exercise and going to the gym and the underlying things with eating disorders rather than about the food.
Yeah, that's a really good question. As I said, for me, the behaviours around the restrictive eating and excessive exercise were a means of control of emotions that I didn't know how to control any other way. Unhealthy means of control. And it wasn't like they were controlling the unhealthy emotions, they ended up being unhealthy behaviours and they took control of me. But the underlying reason was never anything about body. So I was very conscious and became, as I physically recovered and then had these experience decades later, how the language used in the fitness industry in particular, because I've been part of the industry as a personal trainer and group exercise instructor over the last, 30 odd years, I was listening to the language used by exercise professionals and I thought, you're actually feeding that unhealthy thought. So for example, if they're setting weight loss goals or regardless of a person's body shape or size, you don't know what's going on up here. And if someone is at risk or has another mental illness, and there's, eating disorders are often comorbid or existing with anxiety, depression, and you've got the eating disorder on top of that, where people see the signs of either an overweight body or an underweight body and assume that there is a body image issue without understanding the why. So language around, if an exercise professional who's taken a group exercise class is something like, okay, let's burn off all those Easter eggs. You have just added to that thought. And I've seen so many trainers use that example. So part of my light bulb moment was to educate the fitness industry about eating disorders. And I have written a program that AusActive, which was formerly Fitness Australia approved for continuing education for the fitness industry. And I collaborated with the Inside Out Institute for Eating Disorders and formulated a set of guidelines for the fitness industry that Fitness Australia, now AusActive, have adopted, and was the first author in a paper around the knowledge of exercise professionals around eating disorders and how to communicate with a client they believe is at risk. So I'm really proud of that achievement after this experience.
Really? That's amazing.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, Eleni, you spoke of value and worth. What values do you take now or keep?
What values do I keep?
Now.
Of myself?
Whatever.
Anything?
Worth, whatever,
Okay.
whatever. Your value system now.
Yep.
And worth.
The value system now is never, ever to judge. Never to judge. To have empathy, to understand somebody else's why, and to see people as human first. And that goes back towards myself as well, and to learn to forgive yourself, which is one of the hardest things to do. But yeah, to be reminded to have self-compassion as well as show that to others. Yeah.
Mine's more pure curiosity. Have you ever talked to a group? You talked before about the warmth of talking to us and the warmth you felt back. Have you ever talked to a group that have been unmoved by your story?
No.
I'd just be curious if you ever...
Yeah, No, and when I've had like coffee one-on-one with women, or even, you know, people that I've been close to that didn't know the whole story because I was too scared, or even strangers that, you know, wanted to have a coffee with me and talk to them one-on-one, they've gone, oh my gosh, that could have been me. So that also brings more healing, because people see their own vulnerability given that circumstance. And I think that's where people have to feel their vulnerability to then have compassion or empathy for somebody else, rather than just hearing to judge, rather than hearing to understand.
I have another question. While you're thinking of questions, what's your level of gratitude now for your journey?
Oh, up here. Even though it was the hardest thing I've ever been through, I would not have unlearned those thought patterns, and I would never ever have learned the way I did that my parents love me regardless. That was, for me, the gold nugget. And it's just amazing what I can talk to Mum and Dad about now that I'd been scared to my whole life. Yeah.
And professionally?
Professionally, I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing. I never thought that I would be able to speak like this about these issues because of fear. And I've learnt also to express what I'm feeling and to be assertive, where when I was told subjects closed, don't talk about it, that is a huge transformation to how I speak now. Yeah, huge.
Yep.
Did you make any friends with the ladies in prison?
Yes, a few. I can tell you a couple of stories. One friend that I've kept in touch with was another Greek woman, and we connected straight away. And she's out now and leading a very successful life, and 3 beautiful girls. So we've remained friends. But there was a real sense of community with different groups, nationality groups in prison. And I remember it was Christmas. Christmas in prison was one of the hardest, I've got to tell you that, days and times of the year ever. And it was Christmas Eve, and you have a shopping list in prison. It's a set shopping list where you can, like, your family can put in money into a jail account each week, so you can buy whatever is on that list. It's called a buy-up. And I bought certain things to make sure I had good food, because the prison food is terrible. But even though microwave brown rice is not the best, but it was better than some things. And there was, in the house I was in, probably in the last 3 months of my sentence, there was a group of Asian women, and they used to pool all their resources, including their prison meals, and recreate their meals. And it was Christmas Eve, and they said to me, sister, you come and have Christmas lunch with us. And they put on this spread of what they'd recreated, and I felt this real sense of community at that one lunch with these women. And that was beautiful. I'll never forget that. Yeah, it was really cool.
How when you've got mental health issues and everything, and you get put into a cell for 23 hours on your own, what skills or what do you learn? How do you cope?
That's a really good question. And I coped by remembering what my lawyer said to me. So I was down, after they handcuffed me and took me down to the cell, my lawyer came down with a barrister, and she said, keep your head down and do your time. And I went, what does that mean? Like, I've never been to jail before. What does that mean? And I went, when I got taken to Silverwater and I was put in that cell, I kept thinking about that. What does that mean? And And I went, if I was outside, what would I be doing with my time? So I thought, well, I have a routine of exercise, and it was a healthy, appropriate routine of exercise by this point. I'd be keeping my mind active, and I loved working with numbers. So I thought I could do some maths. And I decided I have to fill every single hour, every single day, with stuff that I know makes me feel like me. So I developed a routine of exercise in my cell, just with my body. And I did that every single day. When I was allowed out in the yard and I used whatever they had, even rocks, I was using rocks in pillowcases. And the officers nicknamed me Arnie. And then the women would come up and say, you look like you know what you're doing, can you show us? And it was really nice to show them some things that they could do. So I had to develop, and then I watched TV, which I never did in the community, but I thought, not regularly, but I had, okay, as soon as we were locked up at 3:30 in the afternoon, I picked what shows I would watch. I had a scrapbook and I did some scrapbooking. I started writing my book with pen and paper, which I'm hoping now to get a mentor, a writing mentor. I've put in an application and it's called Inside Out Love. That's what I've titled it. So I'm hoping to have that published within 12 months. That's a goal I have. So I started writing. I just kept active and kept going back to the tools and the thought patterns that my psychologist taught me. So every time an unhealthy thought came up, stop sign would go up, which was the first tool she taught me. Stop that thought. Is it true? No, you are valued, you are loved, you are worthy, all the things that I didn't believe. And I remembered how my family and friends responded when I disclosed with love. And that's how I kept my mental health on track. But it was not easy. It was not easy. Not in that environment. Yeah. And I sang. Yeah. I sang. You could buy on that monthly shopping list you couldn't have your own music in there. That's just, you can't. So I bought a little transistor radio and I was listening to my favourite station after we were locked up, and I had my earpiece in, and my favourite song came on, and it was The Special Two by Missy Higgins. If you don't know the lyrics, look it up. And it really related to my whole journey. So I sang, I went, oh yes, I started singing, forgetting. It just transported me to out of that cell. And I didn't realise how loud I was singing. And I went, oh, after the song finished, and this girl about 4 cells down went, Eleni, was that you? That was sick. And
she didn't call out, shut up.
No, the girl next to me did. She said, well, yeah, shut up, I'm trying to sleep. And it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I went, oh, you miserable old thing. It was like, I'm singing. I'm not arguing with anyone. But, and it was funny because the officers must have heard me, and the next morning when they unlocked our cells and did muster, an officer stood in front of me and goes, Salakis, sing with me. And the girl next to me, her surname was McDonald, and he started going, oh, MacDonald. And it was just one of those light-hearted moments in that situation. So those light-hearted moments also helped me get through it. Yeah.
Hi, Eleni. Did you find that most of the staff or the prison warders or whatever they're called now, were they empathetic to most of the women there, or did they have empathy and understanding of
There was a handful that really wanted to help you rehabilitate, but there was a lot that did not. They treated you with that sense of control and power. And
is that changing now? Sorry, is that changing now from what you've seen and heard and been back in there? Do you think?
Not a lot.
No.
But from what I'm experiencing with the partnership that we're developing with corrective services, there is an attempt to make sure that happens. I still think there needs to be a lot of training of correctional service officers for trauma-informed care, because I don't think they get much of that. But for the handful of officers that did have that empathy, they were the ones you would go to. I actually, was the first week in my first week in custody, one of the officers came and said, "The governor wants to see you." And I went, "Who's the governor?" I didn't know prisoners had a governor. I didn't know. I go, and I shook. I went, "Have I done something wrong? Why does the governor want to see me?" And he said, "I don't know." He took me, and this was another comforting moment in that first week. He took me into his office and sat me on this leather chair and made me Moccona coffee, which is like gold in prison, and offered me Tim Tams. And he said, "I've just read through your whole file," which had all my mental health history, doctor's reports, psych reports. And he said, "I just want to let you know that my daughter had an eating disorder, and I've read through your file and seen the pattern." And he goes, "You shouldn't be in here." And that brought me a lot of comfort. But I said, "Well, I am now, and I admit and accept that I have to pay the price, but thank you for saying that." And that made me feel not all officers or corrective service people are bad or there to punish. So it encouraged me to know that there were people I could rely on to help. Yeah.
Well, I guess, we also know that if people are, inverted commas, wanting to punish others, that's a reflection of the depth of their wounding.
Yeah.
And their mindset, and they are absolutely traumatised, or they would not be wanting to punish others.
Yeah.
And just you talking on that, when you and I got together a few weeks back, you were saying that there was a chance that you could have been given community service and not have gone to jail. Mm. What happened?
So when I was released, and you have to present to if you're on parole, you have to go to your parole office within the first week and report, and then you've got a series of reports to do. The person that did my pre-sentencing report, which is separate to your parole officer that sees you through after your release, he said he actually had me accepted into a community service placement, a community order, but his words were someone put their foot in it at the last minute and I was sent to jail. So you can't do anything about it. You have to, sometimes you're better off not knowing what is going to happen because you'd be traumatised, worried about what's going to happen. You just have to go through it. But for anyone that has loved ones going through that court process now, I just want to say they will get through it. And if you're the person listening, you will get through it. Take one day at a time. There is light at the end of the tunnel if you find the right supports. Yeah.
Hi, Lenny. Is there much incidence of suicide in the jail?
Yep. A lot. Oh, right. And even post-release. Mm. Yeah. Okay.
What's the sort of stats on it?
I can't... There's been over 450 black deaths in custody. I don't know the statistics on those. You could look, Justice Health put out reports all the time. I don't know if they actually report on the suicide figures. But if people aren't given the right support, either in custody or post-release, or even if they're on a community order and they've still got this label and the why hasn't been addressed, the rates of suicide are quite high.
Can I ask one other thing? Just, was there many black women in there at the time, Aboriginal women?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Oh,
What's the percentage like?
yeah,
roughly?
so about 33% of incarcerated women are Aboriginal women, yet they only make up 2% of our population. Yeah.
What don't we get? Why? Why, from your perspective, why is that so out of balance?
The generational trauma that's not addressed,
Yep.
the not recognising the history of trauma and the cycles, the generational cycles, and we've become a industrial prison state where corrective services is an industry. It's an industry. You can look up CSI Industries, and to keep reincarcerating our Indigenous population is so wrong. It's wrong. And there is the, it's discrimination. It is racial discrimination. One of my clients was, and once you have a criminal record, you seem to be, the police know you. So if our Indigenous people are reincarcerated all the time and the police know that they've got a record, they're going to be a target all the time. So they just keep sending them back.
Well,
And their children are taken away from them, and then they've got to try and get them back. So it's trauma on trauma again and again.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in 2017, as I mentioned, when I was contracting to Corrective Services, I flew to Canberra to do a talk at a conference. And when I'm on a plane, I don't usually talk to the person next to me. I'm kind of a bit of an introvert like that. But for some reason, I started a conversation with this gentleman sitting next to me. I won't say what his position was, but it was a senior position in the police force. So we had an amazing conversation on so many things which I'm just not at liberty to share. One of the things that he did say was, because I was asking him the question, given what the men in the domestic abuse programs were telling me at the time. And he said, yes, absolutely, when someone does have a record and they are back out, they will monitor them because of, but what's the percentage of people that go back to jail? Yeah, what's the percentage roughly?
Oh, over 50%.
Yeah.
And most of it within the first few months,
Yep.
especially if they're not given the right supports. In 2019, as a statistic, 900 women were released to homelessness. And a lot of women, you might be given a crisis payment that might cover 2 nights accommodation. A number of women, we've been told, go on Tinder to hook up with someone to get a night somewhere.
Yep. Yep. And some,
It's just,
I don't know about women, but I know that some men that were in the program have been in the system for so long that they'll come out and they will do something to get back in again because they don't know any other way to live.
My young brother was a classic example of that. He passed away several years ago now, in 1998, but he was in and out of jail for most of his adult life. He died at 37 in Melbourne. But yeah, he actually did tell me that he wanted to be in there because he felt safer in jail than out.
yeah,
And he kept reoffending to get it, stealing cars and things like that.
it's so sad. One, in the previous role I mentioned before when I ran group sessions, one of the men sat in front of me and was crying this one day, and I said, what's wrong? And he said, I've purposefully gone out and bought ice to be caught with it so I can be sent back to jail where at least I have a bed and food because I can't get a job out here, I can't get housing out here. And I thought that is a sad state of our society.
It certainly is. Yeah. I'm living in a homeless mission myself at the moment at Mission Australia in Brookvale, and they're wonderful, a really wonderful organisation. And I was very heartened to see three of the young fellows get housed last week. I don't know their histories. Nobody does. It's all private.
Yeah.
But just lovely people to speak to, and everyone is a valued person
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. My mother taught me to value every human being.
Yeah.
But I've seen and heard some terrible things through my work in the Salvation Army many years ago as well. I was a soldier for 6 years in the Manly Corps. I don't want to overtake your
No, you're
talk
right.
or anything. But as far as the homeless situation is, it's appalling
Yeah.
on the northern beaches. And do you know what? I happened to mention to someone the other day that I was living in a Deb's house, and they were just blown away. Why are you there? You know, you've worked hard all your life, you've got a family, you've got grown children, and you're living in a homeless centre. You know, they just don't get it at
No.
all. And the stigma is quite bad,
Yeah.
actually, I must say. Anyway, sorry about that.
No, because
no.
that's one of the evenings I want to have, is
Yeah.
one on homelessness. So
Yeah.
we will chat later. Any last burning questions for Eleni? No? Well, please give Eleni a big hand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. No, it just needs to be done. That's how I see it.
And keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.